is Edo Executive Platform, a program that is designed to bring to bear the policies and programs of Edo State government under the leadership of Mr. Godwin Obaseki. It will also provide accurate information about the developmental strides of the government in all the sectors of the state. As the program unfolds, it will afford Edo people and of course residents in the state the opportunity to air their views and also contribute to the development conversation.
I will commit myself to them, and I'll use every ounce of strength that God has given me to work for my people of Edo State.
My name is Habiba Oyege Oyarekwa. Since the coming on board of Mr. Obaseki's administration, the governor has left no one in doubt that he's indeed committed to ensuring that land and property owners have easy access to the property without any form of harassment from community development associations or thugs. With the coming into force of the Private Property Protection Law and the setting up of a task force to implement the law, peace now reigns in the housing sector and in the various communities, which were hitherto theaters of war, following the unwholesome activities of the Inglorious Development Associations, otherwise known as CDAs. With the disbandment of the associations, land and property developers are happy and relieved and, of course, are carrying out their developmental projects without any hindrance. Our guest on the program today is the Chairman Task Force for the Implementation of Edo State Anti-Community Development Association Law and former Inspector General of Police, a retiree after 35 years stint with the Nigeria Police Force. He is a legal practitioner and security consultant who has talking engagements nationally and internationally. It is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Solomon Arase to the program. Sir, you are welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
My name is Habiba Oyege Oyarekwa, your host for this program. Thank you for staying with us. Sir, your task force is a novel instrument of law enforcement in the state. Now, how does it operate principally?
Well, let me first and foremost commend His Royal Majesty the Oba of Benin and the Executive Governor of the state, Godwin Obaseki, for the synergy they have been able to find in this social legislation. This is the first time the traditional institution is collaborating effectively with the executive to come up with a social legislation that will be able to give meaning to how land is managed and acquired in the states. You know, hitherto this time, we've had a situation where we'll call, you can equate it to a Hobbesian state where, you know, might is right, where some group of our brothers and sisters, you know, some of them in some various communities, they took it upon themselves to appropriate lands, you know, community lands to themselves, without actually looking at the social implications. Because even if you start dividing lands in your community without looking at the demography of that, of how you are going about it, where do you have hospitals, where do you have schools, where do you have recreation center, then you are creating a situation where there is it's a chaotic situation that you are creating. During the coronation of the Oba, he made some pronouncements saying that he was outlawing, you know, the activities of the CDA. And the government quickly went ahead and criminalized it. They came up with a law to say that people should not take lands, you know, that don't belong to them or the community and sell them at will. So what the committee is actually doing is to ensure that those laws, you know, that was passed by the state government and the House of Assembly, they are implemented in such a seamless manner that the people of the state, they start having a semblance of, you know, peace and certainty about how lands are acquired in Benin. It's a task force, they say, but the way we go about it, we had 3 strategic, vision about how to implement it. First was the hearts and minds. Well, if we say these people, they are our relations, they are our brothers, they are our sisters, so maybe they didn't know what the implication of what they were doing, because it was stiffening economic development in the states. If people want to come and acquire a land in Edo State, for example, to establish factories, to establish businesses that would benefit the youths, and you see people carrying cutlasses and guns and chasing them about, then you discover that the economic development of the state is being stifled. So what we are doing is we say, no, now that the law is in place, you can't do that anymore. You can be rehabilitated. The governor is coming up with a lot of policies to rehabilitate them. Secondly, we also say there must be a community partnership approach towards the issues. The Nigis, the Ohens, the traditional rulers in their various communities, they can always come together and see how lands can be appropriated to people who are deserving of them.
Are they cooperating with you?
Well, I will not say we've been able to achieve 100% success in in implementation of the laws. When laws they do happen, some people they are just intransigent. They want to test the might of government, and that is exactly what happens sometimes. So, but there's a legal instrument. The legal instrument says if you are in breach of any of these laws, the criminal justice process can take care of you. That's one area we've not been able to straighten out now, because there's supposed to be a specialized courts, that will fast track the prosecution of these persons. But during my last discussion with the executive governor, he has promised that he's going to ensure that one is done as quickly as possible.
Specialized court, who is going to sit?
It's a judge of the High Court, a legal officer. But I think they have some shortages of judges now, so I think they are trying to sort that out with the chief judge of the state.
And what items are covered by your task force?
Items in land.
Just landed properties?
Yes, landed properties alone. What used to happen is you see a portion of land being sold to 1, 2, 3 persons, and once that happens, then you are asking for anarchy, because maybe the first person who you sold it to will want to take possession, and if he's not taking possession in good time and the land is resold to another person, the other person is also having a claim to that land, then there's always this contestation of who actually is the legal owner of that land. And our young brothers and who were the CDAs who were operating these things, sometimes they deploy violence in trying to enforce their rights, which in any sane society is not acceptable. You cannot allow people to use force, to enforce whatever they are trying to do.
You are a legal practitioner. If, for instance, a parcel of land was sold to you, and that same parcel of land was sold to me, who is the owner of the land?
That is a very tricky one. The position of the law is that if a land is sold to me as the first person who the land who they sold the land to, I should be able to take steps to take possession of that land. You can fence it round, you can get your title documents, by going to the relevant agencies, government agencies, and getting your C of O, having a survey plan. But
if you didn't do that,
if you didn't do that, that is where
the land was sold to me, and I did all that you have just mentioned.
Yes, that is the lacuna in the law that was causing the problem that we had. And the CDA, the outlaw CDA, they were always taking advantage of that lacuna to say, okay, the land was sold to you, you didn't survey it, you didn't take physical possession, you didn't put things in place to show that the land actually belongs to you. So if we sold it to another person, then they now create a problem between the first buyer and the subsequent buyers that are there, while they have taken, the benefits of, the sale from both parties. And we just believe that that is a panacea for anarchy.
If you are a judge, a sitting judge, and such a case is brought to your court,
sometimes these things are very, very difficult to ascertain. From the committee work, you discover that a party will bring a paper that was backdated to the time of our forefathers, and so you're now trying to see how can you ascertain that this document is genuine. A document that is even signed today can be backdated. So it's always, I think the judges, I feel sorry for them too, because sometimes it's difficult for you to ascertain those things. But the easiest way to do most of those things is that when they are registered, you now go to the land registry to see who actually registered first, or who actually did a survey, or deposited the title documents, with the land ministry.
Would the money be returned to the loser at the end of the day?
Monies that are usually proceeds of criminal endeavors, they are usually easily depleted. If a group of CDA boys, they decide to sell your land, your property, for example, they are they operate, as a criminal gang, and once the money is gotten, it means that they have to share it amongst themselves. So if they share it among themselves, who do you now try to get the money from? The restitutions are always very, very difficult when it comes to matters like this, because the money would have been depleted. Sometimes, they take it and they say they have traveled outside the country. So are you going to ask them to now go and refund the money that they use in buying their tickets, or procuring accommodation, or buying cars, or building houses? So it's a very difficult thing to do.
There's always a winner and there's always a loser at the end.
Of course, certainly, absolutely. So what the government is just trying to say is that, can't we prevent such things from happening? If you prevent such things from happening, because sometimes it could be a disincentive to investment in any states. If, for instance, somebody who has worked very hard over the years decides to bring his resources to come and invest in Edo State, for example, and he gets in here and he's confronted with all these issues, he will just start asking himself, what have I done wrong? Is it a bad thing to want to come and invest in my states? Or what am I even doing here? So instead of them creating jobs for our teeming youths, they take their resources outside, to other states where things are done in such an acceptable manner and, legal manner.
All right. Well, if you are just joining us, this is Edo Executive Platform. We'll be right back. Please stay with us.
I will commit myself to them, and I'll use every ounce of strength that God has given me to work for my people of Edo State.
This is Edo Executive Platform, and we're still chatting with the former Inspector General of Police, Dr. Solomon Arase. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us and still being with us on the program. As one of Nigeria's most illustrious police boss, how would you situate the CDA law in tackling the menace of land grabbing in Benin City, the Edo State capital?
I had mentioned to you earlier that my approach to issues of criminality is that you don't wield a big stick, all the time. You allow people to change their ways. You win hearts and minds. It's an approach, a sociological approach towards covering issues of crime. If we appeal to them, it's moral suasion. If we are able to appeal to them to say, these things that you have been doing over the years, you were doing them because you did not know about the implication, the social and economic implication of doing them. Why can't you change your ways? Why can't you look for some other, more lucrative things to do, especially since the state government is creating farms, creating technical institutions? Why can't you, get yourself rehabilitated? But, crime too could be very, very lucrative. When you put it, when you, juxtapose it with doing things that are legitimate, the returns from legitimate business are usually, incremental. They are slow to come. But from criminal enterprise, it is fast, So you must be able to, convince them that this criminal enterprise also has its own price. You can be doing it, and there is always, a terminal point where the state will say no. You cannot, continue doing it this way. So we'll continue to, appeal to them that what they are doing is not good. Then also the community partnership approach. The community partnership approach, it's a strategic approach towards dealing with issues of crime. Getting our, what you call non-state actors, as I mentioned earlier. Our traditional institutions, our parents, other social groups, to be able to, key into what the government and the palace have come up with. Then the last approach, which is the criminal justice approach. So you say, look, we've given you sufficient time for you to be able to mend your ways. And if you are not going to mend your ways, then you allow the criminal justice process to take its turn, which means you'll be investigated, you'll be prosecuted, and possibly you'll be jailed. So the options are usually is left to the people who are benefiting from those criminal enterprises.
All right. Just a few months ago that your task force came into being. What has your experience been so far?
Let me say there was rising expectations, from the members of the public about what they actually expected from the committee. We've been a bit slow to deliver.
Why?
Because we've not been able to, the government have not been able to muster sufficient logistics, to put these things in place. If you have a committee like that, you must be able to have things in place that will help you accelerate the success of that particular committee. The office is still ongoing. They've not been able to complete it. There is also shortage of vehicles. There are some areas where the activities of the CDA is, very, very prevalent. Especially, the Edo south of it. You have less of that in Edo North and Edo Central.
No, not that they are not there.
They are there, but there are pockets of it. They are not as destructive, yes, as you have in the Edo South area. So if, for instance, there's a complaint somewhere in Amagba or in Huode or somewhere, you require to be able to mobilize to that community and ensure that, you are able to stop, the social disorder, as it were. So if you don't have those logistics in place, your response time, is always very, very slow. And sometimes it creates a rising frustration. The rising expectation will now become rising frustration in the minds of the people who we're actually dealing with. But this we have already articulated with the government. And I think the governor has promised that he's going to be able to resolve it as soon as possible. Most importantly, we've not been able to set up a reporting system. The reporting system is very, very key. You must be able to have a reporting system where people who are aggrieved, they can easily reach to, a fusion center or let me say a control room, where these reports are easily made to, and the people will be able to react. So once these things are in place, to me, it's a situation that can be dealt with in a very short time. But it's a man-material mix. Okay. You have to have the manpower, the resources. You also have the material, which is the logistics, for you to be able to have, the desired results.
So that even if members of the public now want to take advantage of your task force,
yes,
there's still experiencing some challenges.
Yeah, there are challenges.
And you are looking forward to the government
yes,
addressing it.
Well, you see, governance has its own challenges too. There are contending issues, always contending issues. I'm sure the governor is thinking about doing some good roads, thinking about putting some, health facilities in place. He's also thinking about ensuring that, job creation is there. Then you also have these other, social issues, that are contending with him. So when you have these issues and you have paucity of funds, then the allocation of, which one is important, comes in. But there is no society that develops without a strong security architecture. So it is the foundation from which every other thing is supposed to flow.
Would you now say that Edo State is safe enough for investors to come in?
Let me put it this way. I have just mentioned that social economic development cannot take place in a situation of anarchy or social, security disorder.
No, since you've come on board,
yes.
Would you now say yes? Can you beat your chest?
Wait, no. There is no society that is crime-less. Yes, there's nothing like a crime-less society. But when the crime becomes such that it starts becoming something that is worrisome, to the citizens, it creates fear. Then the psychological reassurance of security that is supposed to be prevalent in their life is absent. That is when it becomes, something that is not right. So I would say that Edo State is we are in between. We still have serious security challenges, and at the same time, it has not reached that stage where we will now say we have deteriorated to, a state of, anarchy or lawlessness or anomie, whatever you want to call it.
Well, would you say that at least we can go to bed with our eyes shut?
As I said earlier, there is no society, even in the advanced countries.
Yes.
Could you have imagined that, 8 armless young men walked into various airports in the United States, took over, aircraft, and hit at the hearts of the economic, the political, and the intelligence base. It is something that's, something that, yeah, even in the United Kingdom, where they have close to about 5 million CCTVs, crimes still occur. So that is why, for you to have a reasonable crime, a reasonable society where, people can say they are a bit comfortable, there must be a synergy between the citizens and the law enforcement agencies.
Okay. Yeah. Now, we have it on record that most land grabbing matters are usually traced to traditional landholder system. Now, how would you tackle this kind of problems? Because we've had instances where a parcel of land was sold to somebody and someone somewhere will now come and say, no, that family that sold the land to you is not entitled to that land. That land belonged to my great-great-great-grandfather. We have people from, should I say, an extended family, laying claims to that parcel of land. And then, of course, we see it as a traditional land grabbing system.
It is our youths who have complicated these issues. Our traditional African society, in your place, for example, the people, everybody in the society or your community, they know who owns what. The land that your parents had and they left for, the children, and it's known. It's just some group of young men who has refused to look for gainful employment, who have now deployed unnecessary force into taking other people's, land. These things are, they are things that are very ascertainable. My grandfather, I know all our plots of land in Benin here, and even in the villages, were known, when my grandfather was alive. And most of them he passed on to his children. And the children, they also passed it on to their, their own children. So these things were not, they were not really a problem. It is just, some young men who have decided to deploy, force to take over even those things that never belong to them, even their parents. Some of these things, when they deploy, they even deploy outside their own communities. It's as if, it's a proceed of war. Whoever has might can go and forcefully take over another community's land and say, oh yes, there used to be a demarcation. Now the thing has been adjusted. So our traditional values have been eroded. That is just the truth.
All right. Obaseki's administration is about 1 year. Now, how would you rate this government?
It is very, very apparent that the governor, had a blueprint about who wanted to take Edo State to. For if you see his pronouncements, if you see the way he has been going, you'll be convinced that, he's not in doubt about those things he wants to do. But as I said earlier, issues of IGRO, will he be able to generate, or will the citizens be able to, assist in generating sufficient resources, in as far as when you want to put it side by side with the dwindling federal allocation that is coming to the states and the other contending issues. There are a lot of things to be done, roads, hospitals, schools, farms, new settlements. It is true that a young man has a lot of ideas. It's just him being able to harness sufficient resources and getting the support of the state people to be able to drive it. But by and large,
Scorecard.
Sorry?
Scorecard.
Scorecard.
Yeah.
It's done well. It was just 1 year down the line that I think the legacies are things that are imperishable, things that you can touch and feel. Those are legacies. So it's not media hype or that type of a thing. So if you go around the states, you'll see that things are happening, just within 1 year. It's able to put a lot of things in place and all those type of things. So I think what we just pray is that he should be able to get the support of his political elites, and the citizens should be able to cooperate with him. We're in a hurry to develop. Benin, I have traveled the length and breadth of this country. Benin, anytime I come into Benin, I have a sense of depression. To me, it gives me a rural setting. It's not that cosmopolitan, ambience you are supposed to get from a state that metamorphosed from old Midwest state. It was among one of the regions in those days. From Midwest state, it went to Bende. Bende is now Edo State, but the development has been very, very slow. So I think we should encourage him and do everything to ensure that he's able to leave, enduring legacies, behind.
Lastly, your task force, does the jurisdiction also cover Edo Central and of course Edo North?
It's the whole state.
Oh, yeah?
It's the whole state. But as I was telling you, the tendencies, that threw up, the CDAs, they are not too prevalent in Edo North and Edo Central. There are pockets of them. There are some group of boys who come together to say that they are CDA and they want to, harass. But it's not as serious as you have in Edo South. It's more prevalent here. At least the 6 local governments in Edo South. That is where you have most of the problems.
But are they expected to bring their cases to Benin?
Oh yes, it's a committee work. The jurisdiction, cuts across all the boundaries of the states.
Well, we'd like to say a big thank you to you for coming on to this edition of the program, Edo Executive Platform. I will believe that when we call on you again, you definitely would oblige us.
Thank you for it.
My name is Habiba Oyege Oyarekwa. Thank you for staying with us.